her feet down in the crystal water. The spot was perfect. The water formed a pool at the widest part of the stream, with shade trees hanging over the far bank and a drop in the stream bed that created a tiny, burbling waterfall. If she were honest, she would have had to say she was pretending to read about Jekyll and Hyde, since she was looking at the same paragraph over and over. She could not stop wondering if Phelan was going to appear, and if he did, what it would be like to finally have a full conversation with him. And, like a true gentleman, he did not keep her waiting long. Almost before she heard his step on the other bank, his baritone brogue slipped into her ears and gave her tingles.
Good afternoon, Red. What a surprise to chance upon you here at precisely 3 o'clock.
She cast him a sidelong glance. You realize it's closer to 2:30, don't you?
Is it? Imagine that. I suppose that makes it all the more coincidental, doesn't it?
He leapt across the stream like it was a puddle, and August felt another zap of electricity as he came closer to her. Today he was wearing jeans and a tight sage green tee. His face still had a couple of days of whisker growth, even though his damp mane of hair appeared to be freshly washed. They faced each other, she on her rock and he just a few feet away, and he squatted on the sun-warmed grass and peered at her book.
Ah, fine tale that. Monsters within us, light and dark at once. Each of us working at being our best selves until something stirs the beast within. What do you think, Red? Have you a monster in you?
August drank in his relaxed gestures and the cadence of his speech. She observed every tantalizing aspect, intending to hold the image of him close and keeping it with her. I suppose we all do. I'm not so innocent as I seem, she teased, hoping he'd pick up on her none too subtle entendre. Ever the gentleman, he gave her no more than a wink for it, half a wink really, and went on to talk about Robert Louis Stevenson's own life. He asked her if she'd read any of his other works, and wondered how August would compare him to modern writers of psychological horror, while he couldn't resist noting that Stevenson was Scottish, which might sway his own opinion a bit. August's heart fluttered that he cared what she thought on such matters. For 2 hours they talked, and August was electrified by the way their conversation flowed and shifted, as though their perceptions were perfectly in sync. She couldn't get over how closely he listened to her, how he absorbed not only what she was saying, but also understood why she would think it. Never once did she have to explain herself. Her thoughts raced over ideas about human suffering, about love and the contradictory nature of man, both benevolent and savage, and she felt as though her mind was waking up after a year of hibernation. And perhaps in these moments, her grief receded just enough.
When it comes down to it, I think a monster is no more than a child, armed with a fierce power to take what it wants. And it's only when we learn to care about what someone else needs
that we truly grow up and tame the beast within. Wow, she said a little too loudly, suppressing a grin.
Aye. Wow.
His face was radiant. If he'd been any closer, she would have been unable to resist her impulse to kiss that perfect chin. August was somewhat crestfallen then when he rose, stretched his legs, gave a small bow, and bid her a good evening. She mentioned casually that she would be at the stream again on Wednesday at 3, hoping she didn't sound too eager.
Well then, I hope I find myself on this path again.
He seemed to want to say something more, August thought, and she certainly did want to say more, though all she managed was an awkward goodbye, and after a moment he bowed again to her and turned away. She watched him pad off into the trees, a slight bounce to his now dry black and gray locks. They did meet several more times in that spot, and their conversations continued to sparkle with ideas. Before their meetings, August would fret over wanting to be graceful and ladylike. Phelan was so dignified, and it made her want to be his equal in manners, though she imagined she would only ever be klutzy and awkward or say the wrong thing. And yet each time, once they began talking, she forgot about those concerns, losing herself in the thrill of connecting with his mind. It seemed to August that there was nothing Phelan didn't understand. He had not read Cosmos, and yet none of the world's great astronomers or mathematicians were unknown to him. And with the tales of the Grimm brothers, he could quote them by heart and even embellish them, filling in details that he said had been left out. At August's request, he had taken to reading them aloud for her. She loved the music of his subdued accent, which revealed itself in a passage with a lot of R's. His unintentional trill would inspire a blooming sensation deep in her body, and when his voice dipped into a low rumble, it sometimes gave her a shiver that rippled through her. A boy's voice had never had this impact on her before, though admittedly, he was no boy. He was a man, with a man's voice and man's chest hair and facial stubble by dinner time. Her mother had noticed an upswing in August's mood and started to ask oblique questions about what was making her smile all the time. After a few weeks of the reading sessions by the stream, she finally confessed to her mother what she'd been up to. To August's surprise, she seemed unconcerned about her daughter spending time with their neighbor. I've known Phelan for years. He's a good man. Just